And we are going to set aside some time for questions, so start saving them up now, and hopefully we'll get to at least some of them. We have a rather extraordinary panel to deal with an issue that there's a lot happening about looking at how California can do a better job in terms of recruiting teachers, preparing teachers, credentialing teachers, retaining teachers, and evaluating teachers. Except for the latter portion, the other ideas and discussions that are going on have really been restricted pretty much to policymakers and haven't gotten as much attention as they deserve and should be getting in the public arena, and certainly in the media, even though without good teachers, we don't have good schools. So this is a critically important part of the reform agenda, which is why we felt it was important to bring this panel together. I'll just go through very quickly. Linda Darling-Hammond, who you already heard from earlier. Next to her is Ramona Bishop, who is the superintendent of the Vallejo City Unified School District, which has just emerged from state, is it state administrator or state trusteeship? I don't know these, is it?
State administrators.
Gotten rid of the state administrator, they still have a state trustee. We also are very pleased to have Jennifer Thomas, who's president of the San Jose Teachers Association, who's been involved in one of the most innovative agreements that's been reached anywhere in the state on this whole teacher evaluation challenge. We are also very pleased to have Tim Melton, who is Vice President for Legislative Affairs for Students First. And have I covered everybody? Yeah. Joan.
I'm right here.
Yes, Joan. Joan. She wasn't on my list here, so I was like, Joan Buchanan, who is a key player in all of this. She is chairperson of the Assembly Education Committee and has some legislative proposals which she's been working on. I hope she might be able to share with us what she has in mind. I'm going to start with Linda, just to kind of set the stage. In your Greatness by Design report, you wrote, or you and your colleagues wrote, teaching has become an increasingly unattractive job in California. The numbers of teachers who've been given credentials is plummeting. The number of students enrolling in teacher preparation programs is plummeting. You have many different proposals in this Greatness by Design report. What do you see as the key reforms that you think need to happen? Let's just start in terms of trying to make teaching a little more of an attractive profession.
Well, I think that the context in California is known to everyone here. We've had fewer and fewer resources to work with. People working in the most under-resourced school districts with the highest need populations have watched their class sizes get larger and larger, their working conditions get poorer and poorer. In general, teaching is not the most attractive profession in the United States. In contrast to the highest achieving countries, people here typically earn about 60% of what another college graduate earns, whereas it's at least equivalent in high achieving nations. They typically get almost no support for their preparation, as opposed to Finland or Singapore or Korea, where you would come into a high quality program completely funded by government funds with a stipend or a salary while you're training. You would go into a well-resourced, equitably funded school with textbooks and computers and materials and all of those things, with a lot of time to collaborate with your colleagues, typically 10 to 20 hours a week. in those countries for teachers to collaborate with one another and learn and do lesson study and action research and so on, and extensive, readily available professional development in some places like Singapore, a career ladder sort of available for those who want to become master teachers or specialists in curriculum or assessment or school leaders, et cetera. We have none of those things in place for teaching in California. We had some incentives for coming into the profession at one time. The governor's fellowships, the CalT grants have shrunk significantly, the Apple loans. As I've said before, the salaries are so disparate and class sizes are large and supports are few. And on top of that, we have an accountability system that, like others in the country, has been substantially a test and punish system, which was reinforced by the incentives under No Child Left Behind. And tests that most teachers will tell you are so narrow that they make it harder to do the most important kinds of teaching if you're trying to raise the scores on the test. So what would we need to do? We need to address all of those things. We need to be sure that as we equalize funding and make it more equitable, that we also equalize salaries and working conditions so that it's not a disparate experience for a teacher to go teach in Palo Alto or East Palo Alto or any number of other places that you can name and we need to begin to move the teacher education system towards one that really supports people in having the knowledge and skills they want to have. The most important thing teachers want to do is make a difference with their kids. And it's not a profession you go into if money is your main driver. And if you did go into teaching for that reason, you probably didn't, look ahead, read the balance sheet, and there should be some question about your general, intelligence. Most teachers are there because they want to do a good job. The way you do a good job, in addition to having the supports, is having the knowledge and skills. And that knowledge is really sophisticated. When you want to know how to teach kids to engage in higher order thinking and critical problem solving and so on, you want to do that for a range of students with different language backgrounds in your classroom and different learning styles and strategies and cultural backgrounds and so on. That's a very broad and deep kind of knowledge base. California is also the only state in the country which puts a cap on teacher education. There's a one-year limit on how much training you can get to come into the classroom. It's moved largely to the graduate level. We have a few undergraduate programs that are there wending their way through a thicket of regulations. So we've got to make it possible for people to get the knowledge and skills that they need, to get the clinical experiences that they need. That's going to mean both improving the caliber of preparation, getting rid of the artificial regulations and caps that are currently there, putting back in place the incentives for people to go into high-need fields, math, physical science, special education, teaching of English learners, and go into high-need communities with those service scholarships back in place that replicate a little bit of what other countries have. And as we help districts learn how to use the additional resources that we hope and anticipate will be coming into the system, we need to be sure that they're thinking about the fact that teaching is a team sport. I just met with one of our STEP graduates recently who's changing jobs and looking for career advice. And what she said, just like most of our students and graduates, is where can I find a collaborative setting where I'll have the opportunity to work with other teachers? That matters about as much as anything to most teachers. That means we've got to build the time in, we've got to find ways to build those supports in place, and we need the kind of evaluation systems, which I'm sure we'll come back to, that are envisioned in work that Joan's been doing and others to think about how you build a supportive, learning-oriented, collaborative system of support and evaluation.
And just let me ask you quickly, Linda, where do these proposals, like the one to change the limits on how long the teacher preparation program should be, where is that decision being made? Would that be at the Credentialing Commission, State Board of Education, legislature? And what kind of timeline are we talking about in terms of making some of these reforms happen?
Well, that particular one happens to be a legislative decision, and there is some language floating around in the legislature now to do that, to basically lift the cap and let people figure out how to use the undergraduate years more productively. You know, if you've decided you want to be a teacher, go ahead. Let's get busy. You know, keeping the content expectations that we need. We don't want to let content to get diluted, but we want pedagogical opportunities to become available. So that is legislative. Other things are regulatory. So the CTC has been busy raising standards, making plans to begin to use accreditation both to lift the floor on programs, but also to identify excellent programs so others can learn from them. So that we have this kind of, Pedro Noguera talked earlier about, let's hold up the places that are doing good work so that others can learn from that. We need to do that in the teaching space as well, and some of that is both regulatory and available for those who have the vision and the imagination to begin to do that without even regulatory change.
Let me go to Ramona Bishop. These have been a tough few years for teachers. The MetLife survey came out recently, said that more than half of teachers experience extreme stress, like several days a week. Teachers have been targeted, blamed for almost everything that happens with kids. What do you see in your district? Are teachers demoralized? And what are you doing to motivate them and to give them the skills that they need?
Thank you for the question. I first of all have to bring you greetings from the Vallejo City Unified School District Board of Education, from our teaching staff, from our administrative staff, our classified staff, our parents, and our students. And I would also say to you that as a former teacher in the Oakland Unified School District, prior to class size reduction, having 35 on average students in my classroom, I think we have to change the conversation about teaching in our state and in our nation. I think we have to stop lamenting the profession of teaching and raise it to the next level. I think that the best way to professionalize our teachers is to have our excellent teachers at the table as we're making each and every decision we make in our state around teaching and learning. Excellent teachers thank you. I chose to teach. I chose to teach in East Oakland. I chose to teach in a school district. I knew exactly how much money I was going to make. It wasn't that. It was the fact that I felt I had a moral obligation to give back to students who perhaps weren't as fortunate as I was growing up. And so as we think about these conversations with regard to whether it's teacher evaluation, whether it's accountability systems, whether it's local control funding formula, we have to talk to our best and brightest teachers on an ongoing basis. And let me be clear. As a superintendent, I've seen many, many teachers at these tables and in these various frameworks being advisors to the legislators, to the researchers that are thinking about these things. I would like to be asked as a superintendent, which teachers in your district should we talk to? I'm rarely asked that. And when I'm asked, I would like to be asked the question about, is this person effective in the classroom before they serve on an advisory panel? I would like to be asked, thank you. I would like to be asked, which students does this person teach? Does this person teach in a diverse community that is reflective of our diverse California? I would like to be asked, how effective is this person, not just by a test measure, which we know is not the only indicator of success, correct? We know that a teacher is excellent when every child, no matter how difficult the circumstances, comes to school. We know that a teacher is excellent when every parent feels a part of that teacher's community. We know a teacher is excellent when the principal is overwhelmed with requests for that teacher. And I would like those teachers, many of them union members, to be advising us as we move forward. And thank you. And What I'll say in Vallejo is we've built a system where we are learning from those teachers. Very quickly in closing, we have two things that we've put in place, and I can talk about others later. One is the Teacher Institute, where our best and brightest teachers work with the students who are, work with the teachers who are having difficulty. Not me. I haven't been in the classroom for a long time. Not the administrators. They, in many cases, haven't been in the classroom in a long time. Our best and brightest teachers work with the teachers who are having difficulty, because no teacher went into this profession to be a failure, correct? And so we have to lift each other up. Secondly, what we have in the Vallejo City Unified School District is called teacher networks, and those networks are for the purpose of grade levels across our district getting together. There is not one administrator in the room. And those grade levels have been held to have conversations to collaborate around best practices that will lead to high performance. Those networks are led by the teachers that I mentioned. Those networks at the subject area are talk about collaboration, how are we moving students forward, led by our best and brightest teachers. And when we do that, we professionalize our teachers. We allow them to have the conversations that are necessary, and we stop lamenting about what isn't. Can we get better? Absolutely. But we stop lamenting about what isn't when we have conversations with people who are doing well and support those who aren't doing as well. Thank you.
Well, Ramona Bishop talked about identifying the best teachers and putting them to work. And I'd say this has been probably one of the most contentious issues on the education landscape, is how we do that. And as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, the issue of linking teacher evaluations to the test scores of students has been on the forefront of the agenda and the Obama administration's agenda as well. Students First have been out front on this issue, and so I just wanted to bring Tim Milton into the conversation. Where do you guys stand on this now? Because I've seen different thresholds, 50% of a teacher's evaluation to be based on test scores, 35. Where do you guys stand now?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of research that hasn't been vetted out yet on the percentage, so I don't want to get narrowed down a particular percentage. You know, obviously, a significant portion we think should be based on the value that the teachers are giving and the student growth that takes place in a classroom. Everybody in this room brings a different lens to everything they view in life. I mean, I came from a very poor neighborhood in a single-parent household, and my mom got remarried when I was 9 years old, and she sent me to a private school because I was in a community that there was a 60% dropout rate. My high school proficiency for math was 5%, English was 11%, but yet every single teacher in that school was rated exemplary. But something was wrong. There was a disconnect. And my mom sent me to a private school, and I will tell you, when I look back in life, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for that decision my mom made. My mom should not have had to have made that decision. I should have been able to go to my local public school and get a great education, and not now, as an adult and a parent first, feel guilty about my neighbors that I grew up with that didn't have the opportunities that I had. So when I look at this, the most frustrating thing as a parent right now is we all talk about excellent teaching. We talk about the great teachers. Why don't we have a system that just identifies it? I can tell you right now, every teacher in the school building, every principal, every parent, every student, the janitor in the school system knows who the good teachers and the bad teachers are. Because they do gasp when they get that teacher assignment and go, oh, no, I don't want that teacher. Or no, I want Mrs. Jones, though. So we know who the good and bad teachers are. We're the greatest country in America. Yet we can't together collectively create an evaluation system that tells us what we already know. This is what's amazing to me. And people want to talk about 50% or 30%. Look, let's just all get to the table and quit talking about it. The good thing about this is that now we're talking about it. 10 years ago, we weren't even talking about it. You know, I got elected to the Michigan State House of Representatives as a freshman, was named chairman of the Education Committee. Walked in, sat there, wasn't an educator, wasn't an expert like the other panelists here on the table today. And I said, okay, Mr. Speaker and Madam Governor, where is the plan that you want me to work on? The Democrats, which I am, have to have some systematic plan that you want me to work on over the next 6 years of my career. And they said, oh, no, there's no plan. We don't have it's up to you. I said, well, I'm not an educator. And then all of a sudden, people started knocking on my door, and Representative Buchanan will attest to this. Every special interest group lined up as soon as committee assignments came out. Oh, Representative Melton, there's our plan for the next year. It was all about adult interest, not student interest. We need to figure this simple thing out. Let's determine who the best educators are, and the ones that aren't the best, let's get them the proper professional development. I don't think anybody in this room is going to argue that. The student's first position is clear. Not every teacher is created equal. Not every teacher can go into the city of Pontiac and teach. You might be a great teacher, but I will tell you, the main problem that we've got in this state is this achievement gap, and this country's main problem is this achievement gap. And I'm not going to bore you with the stats.
Right.
We all know it's a major issue. But I will tell you, we've got to find who those special people are, and we got to put them in the right place so they can actually teach these kids. And I will tell you, it's not a 9 to 5. Those jobs may be 7 to 7, and on the weekends, and calling those kids at home, and making sure they show up to school, like the superintendent said. That's a key point. That's what Students First stands for. We want a rigorous evaluation system that's going to determine who the good ones are and who needs help, get them the best help we can so they could all succeed.
But Tim, can I just follow up on that?
Please.
But could you address that threshold issue? Are you saying you guys don't really have a position at this point?
I mean, we have a position. I mean, our position is it should be significant. I would tell you, when I talk to my wife and I ask her what significant is, she says 1%. And I said, well, what do you mean, honey? And she goes, well, if you win an election by 1%, that's significant. So the Obama administration came out with the word significant. And we sat around, I sat in my very office as the education chairman, and had every single organization come in and give me a different definition of significant. We believe significant is important. Everyone else can define that how you want. Do we think, is it significant if it's 5% and there's 50 other measures that are 4%? Then that's the most relevant. We think anywhere from 30 to 50% makes sense.
30 to 50%, okay. Just a question, you had a bill in the legislature which dealt with some evaluation issues, having more regular evaluations. Do you have
Me
plan?
personally?
No,
Oh, yeah.
the Students First. Are you going to, is
Yeah,
Student First?
I mean, look,
How
there's a-
focused are you on California? Just-
Very, very good. We're in 18 states. We are based in California, in Sacramento. That's where I work now. I moved my whole family out here. We are very focused. I mean, look, I'm going to tell you right now, there was a bill up just this week. And this is what's very mind-numbing to me as a former legislator and somebody that I thought was willing to take on the tough challenges. Number one, I asked myself 3 questions. Number one, can kids in high areas of poverty learn? The answer is yes. Number 2, do we know what works? There are schools right here in San Jose with 95% free and reduced lunch population that has 850s on the API. We know that these kids can learn, and we know that there are schools that make it work. Number 3, does the legislature in this state have the political courage to do what it's going to take to do it? There was a bill just this week, Senator Calderon, a Democrat, put in a bill that did 3 things. Number 1, the state law says teachers have to be evaluated once every 5 years. Number 2, we wanted at least 4 different levels, not just satisfactory, non-satisfactory, 4 different levels of job performance. And number 3, that parents should be involved in the creation of the evaluation system. That's it. 3 things. No one in this room, I bet, disagrees that those are pretty common, simple steps to take. There was one hearing. Teachers from all over the state showed up in that hearing room. 100 of them lined up outside the door and said, this is very simple, we agree with this, and we want it. All it did was move it from 5 years to 3 years. A teacher stood up and he says, I worked at Blockbuster Video and got evaluated more often on my candy upsales than I did as a teacher. I mean, there was a student that came in from a local high school and said, I get evaluated every quarter, and my teacher gets evaluated, if this bill passes, 3 times a decade. This is just common sense stuff. And satisfactory, non-satisfactory, there was a study, or
Tim,
this is important, though.
let's go to the
But just
assembly
one more
room.
point, if I could, because there was a poll done of teachers. And what do teachers want? Ask yourself what teachers want. Do you think a teacher that's a great teacher wants to be called satisfactory? Does anybody want to be called satisfactory? No. You want to actually know, are you good? Do you need help? Or are you great, excellent in achieving? That's all this bill did. 3 senators at the end of the day voted for it. 6 others sat there and abstained and would not even vote, yay or nay. 1 senator stood up and said, abstention is a position. Not yay or nay, I vigorously abstain. That is not a position. What we elect people in these states to do is take a position. If you are against it, be against it. 100 people stood up there, teachers, dues-paying CTA members, said, look,
Tim.
this is what I want. And that's what I think we all want.
Okay, well, let's go to the chair of the Assembly Education Commission.
Do I get it?
Did you vote on that bill?
No, I'm in the Assembly, not the Senate.
That was at the Senate.
I'd like to be a senator, but right now
Okay,
I'm in
so
the
that was in the
Assembly
Senate.
having a job to do. So I hope I get equal time. Let me
It's
just,
gender-based. I should
let
get
me
equal
just
time.
say a few things, okay? First of all, we're not going to legislate our way to educational excellence. We're not going to test our way to educational excellence. There are some great charter schools, but if any of you read the report that came out of Stanford, one of the most comprehensive studies on charter schools, 17% do better, 37% do worse, the rest about the same. So there are some great charter schools, but that's not what's going to save public education. People talk a great deal about technology and about online learning. That's not going to save public education. There are some great tools. They may help make people more effective. But what makes the single biggest difference in student achievement, whether you're in a low-performing school or a high-performing school, is having a highly effective teacher in the classroom. And highly effective teachers are developed over time. If we're going to change education, if we're going to make teachers more effective, if we're going to help students learn, then we're going to have to make a real investment in our schools, because we're not going to do it if we continue to disinvest the way we've been doing for the last 4 decades. Now, where do I stand on education? I'm a big proponent of total quality management. I practiced it back when I was in the private sector. In public education today, we call them professional learning communities. It's really simple. If you know anything about Deming, in all of the studies that he did on quality, he said 15% of the problems are with the people, 85% of the problems are with the system. If you want to improve quality, fix the system. People want to do a good job. I don't care if you're the custodian or the teacher or the principal or the superintendent. People go into any job and they want to do a good job. So you need to have a system that can build capacity and help people perform at the highest level possible. So my recipe, and then I'll talk a little bit more about specifically teacher evaluation, and some of you have heard me say this. If I were going to do anything to improve public education today, the first thing I do is put significantly more money into administrator training. Not teacher training, but administrator training. I have never seen a great school without a great principal, and I've never seen a great district without a great superintendent. Leadership starts at the top. When Deming was asked to go into Japan after World War II, because their country was devastated, and Japan's not a country with oil and other kinds of natural resources, he said, well, you can make products. You can import natural resources. You can make products to a high level of quality and sell them and make enough money to build an economy to support your people, feed them, clothe them, educate them. And when we went over there, he said, I'll only go if I start with the president of the company, because he knew that if the president didn't buy into the changes he was proposing, that it would never happen from the bottom up. So the first thing I would do is invest in administrators. The second thing I would do is put significantly more dollars in teacher training. You have to build capacity of the system. A good evaluation system not only identifies those teachers who are weak and need support and provides those support to them so they can become good teachers. A good evaluation system takes teachers who are good teachers and helps them become great teachers. It takes great teachers and helps them to become even greater teachers. And I don't think we're ever going to get there by just ranking and sorting. Business tried that years ago. We'll just rank and sort our employees, so 5 or 10% at the bottom, we'll get rid of them and we'll bring some new ones in. That doesn't change a system. A system improves when we actually build the capacity of the entire system. And the last thing I would do if I were going to improve education today is I would make a significant investment in high-quality preschool for all children. We know that students who come to kindergarten who have been in preschool come with twice the vocabulary of students who haven't and 3 times the vocabulary of English language learners. We know that students that aren't reading by 3rd grade, and more recent information basically tells you 2nd grade, are likely not to graduate from high school. So we've got to put more money in the front end if we're going to grow. Now, where do I differ from Students First? I don't think a value-added system of evaluation is ever going to help us increase capacity of the system. You know, how students do in 3rd grade depends a great deal on the quality education they had in kindergarten, in 1st grade, in 2nd grade. Over half your subjects, you don't have any way even to measure value added. If I give a test right now to a student in 7th grade and that student is 2 or 3 years behind grade level, that student's going to show is not performing, even though that teacher could have brought that student up more than a year in progress during that time period. So I don't think value added is going to get us where we want to be. And I think we have far too reliance on test scores right now.
Can I just ask you, are you going to be introducing
I'm working on a bill right now, and I'll tell you the elements in my bill. I just want to bring a couple more points out. I believe, my roots are in PTA. I've been involved in our schools, not only my 18 years on school board, but going back a decade before that in PTA, and I believe in parent involvement. I believe in site councils. We always surveyed our parents. But I don't think parents and students should be evaluating teachers. We may say we know the good teachers. My youngest are twins. They had the same teacher in 9th grade history. To this day, my son thinks he is the best teacher he ever had in K-12 education, and my daughter can't stand him. Would someone tell me, is this an outstanding teacher, or is this a teacher who should be finding another profession? We hire principals to go in and do evaluations. We need to be able to train them on how to do effective evaluations, but equally importantly, you know, it's not just a matter of identifying the weaknesses. The problem is what do you do when you find them? How are you going to go in and support and provide assistance to these teachers so that we can actually help them become good or great teachers? And too often it stops there. You know, if I'm playing golf and every ball I hit, I'm slicing off to the right, you know, I need the pro to tell me what is it? Am I lined up wrong? Is my backswing, is my follow through? We need to have highly skilled administrators who go in and not only do the evaluations, but have what I would call professional improvement plans to go in and work with these teachers and help them become great teachers. So the element of the bill I'm working on, it's a 2-year bill, is one, I do think we should evaluate more frequently. I believe we need to train our evaluators in how to evaluate. I believe the evaluation should be based on multiple measures. Test scores should be one of those measures, but not test scores in terms of value added. Test scores in terms of how are teachers using those test scores to drive instructional improvement. The reason we give a test is to see what students know and what students learn. That's the value of a test. The test we give through our standardized tests is like inspecting a car at the end of the assembly line. It doesn't tell you if you missed problems all the way along the line. And so if you've got a system based on professional learning communities, what you're doing is every 4 to 6 weeks you're giving assessments and you're determining what students know and what they don't know. You're providing time and support for those students who need assistance, and for those that are doing well, you're actually challenging them to achieve in even higher levels. But evaluations inform instruction, and that's what you want to look for with evaluations. The assessments need to be based, again, on multiple measures. When teachers who are not performing, they should be given professional improvement plans. At the end of a year, if we're not seeing improvement, they might need to find another job. If not, I think you move along from there. A lot of questions come up on whether or not we can negotiate an evaluation process. I believe we can. If you can't sit down with your teachers and have a fundamental conversation about what quality assessment looks like and how you're going to measure it, how on earth are you going to improve instruction? Management is about getting things done through people, and there's no industry or field where that's more true or truer than in education. We get the job done through the teachers in the classroom, and we all have to should have a common vision on what quality instruction looks like. You know,
think
past that in the...
Assemblywoman, I think we just got
All
to
right.
jump to.
No problem. I'll
to-
quit there and answer
I want
questions
to-
later.
I want to. Now that's a perfect segue to the what's happening in San Jose, and if you could briefly fill us in on the agreement you reached there.
Briefly, I don't have that kind of time. There are big things happening in San Jose. First of all, I'm a big fan of Paul Fong, but I'm definitely moving to Jones District. Thank you, Joan. And Ramona Bishop is now my second favorite superintendent in the state of California, so I appreciate the work that you are doing. Briefly, so the focus on evaluation in the San Jose Unified School District, which, by the way, I'm welcoming you all to. You're in my district, home of the greatest teachers union in California, the San Jose Teachers Association. So if we can do anything to make your stay more pleasant, please let us know. The focus has been not on what people outside of our organization are telling us we should do, but what the people inside of our organization know we need to do, not only for our students, not only for our teachers, but for our parents, our communities, and for our future. We stopped listening to the Senate, with all due respect to Senator Calderon. I don't have time for that kind of crazy abstention is a position, and started looking inward and saying, hey, teachers, what do you need from an evaluation system to know what you need to do to have the impact on your students' lives that you know you were born to do? And that's where the conversation began. What is fair in an evaluation system? What is equitable in an evaluation system? What is accurate and research-based in an evaluation system will produce what is right for an evaluation system. So we've decided to move away from a system that focuses on 30-minute observations with a series of check marks that tell you if you're ineffective, progressing, highly effective. None of those things come with a rubric, and nobody knows what those mean. So we actually have a problem with a 4-point system. We've decided to move away from all of that, take the California standards for the teaching profession, thank you to the work of people like Linda Darling-Hammond, and actually sit down with our teachers after extensive observations, and of course all classroom and non-classroom personnel, because we're not just talking about teachers, we're talking about counselors and nurses and speech-language pathologists, because we aren't just looking at the classroom anymore. We're looking at systems that support student development and growth in the direction that we need them to go. So actually asking, this is crazy, our evaluators to write a narrative based on extensive observation and experience with the personnel who were charged with shaping our students' lives is one of the revolutionary contributions San Jose Unified and SJTA are making to the evaluation conversation. On top of that, creating a rigorous oversight process where the teachers and the evaluators share responsibility for ensuring that those evaluations are fair, equitable, and accurate is another innovation that to me is not innovative. It's just the right and the ethical and the research-based things to do. So our goal is to ensure that every person who comes into contact with a child gets an evaluation that reflects what they contribute to that child's education from somebody who knows what they do. I can't tell you the number of teachers who call and say to me, Jen, I don't know what to tell you. I'm a chemistry teacher. My evaluator was a PE teacher. I respect PE, but half the things he says aren't even science. So that was another focus for us. just making sure that people who are doing the evaluating know how to do it, and when they can't do it correctly, they are accountable to not just one person, but a group of people accountable to both the teacher's representation, because we are only interested in what is right for our students, and to the superintendent himself, and that's where we are headed. And it's a terrifying place to be. We are probably going to screw some of this up. And the conversations that I have with our teachers and our classroom personnel and non-classroom personnel, we just need to take the leap together. We're all going to hold hands, we're going to take a deep breath, we're going to be incredibly transparent, and we're going to build on this tiny flame of trust we have developed with our district. Because in all the conversations I've heard today, I have maybe only once heard the word trust. I've heard about dysfunctional districts, and they are out there. Come work in my district. I have heard about dysfunctional school boards. They are out there, and one of my school board members is here. Hey, Teresa. Ours is not, but it takes work. It is a marriage where nobody picks their partner, and it still requires the same amount of time, communication, and passion. And because we've been honest and transparent with each other, we can take those tiny steps towards really altering the direction of our district.
Jennifer, just to clarify, you were able to reach an agreement with the school district?
Yes.
It's a negotiated agreement on this?
Well, the two bargaining teams have reached an agreement. By the way, this is all a secret. Don't tell anybody, because our membership, the vote is honestly out for ratification by our membership, and they are terrified, excited and terrified by the possibilities that empowering them to take their profession back from the pundits and the business people who don't know what they do in the classroom, who don't know what it looks like, who don't know what it feels like to have 32 kindergartners running around outside of a birthday party. We are asking them to own that again, to be more than a test score, to be more than another staff meeting about API and AYP and unfunded mandates. We are asking them to do that. And you know what? It's been so long since we've asked them to be the professionals they were born to be that they are absolutely terrified. But it's going to be okay. So hopefully our people believe in us enough to take that leap with us, and if they don't, we'll go back again.
And
if they will, hopefully our board will approve it.
When is that vote? When is that?
So if any of you are in my unit, you need to have the ballots in my office by next Friday at 5 o'clock. If you need me to come pick them up, I will come pick them up for you. I know you're very busy with the 75 CST test you're giving this week. So the ballots are out now, and then our school board will vote depending on how we vote.
I just wanted to come back to Linda Darling-Hammond to get her quick thoughts. And while she's talking, if any of you have some questions, let's try to get in a couple of questions. So please come to the microphone. Linda.
First of all, thank you. That was spectacular. I think what a great panel, and I think a lot of consensus about the need for high-quality evaluation, about the need to incorporate evidence of both teachers' practice in relation to standards and student learning in ways that are productive, and collaboration and contributions there. I agree with Joan that if you want to improve teacher quality, including evaluation, administrator preparation and training is at the core. I would add to her list that good evaluation systems also allow teachers to learn from one another. And I know that's in her mind. She just didn't get a chance to say it, so I want to underscore that. Here's the place, here's the rub. And the rub is, while I think there's a lot of agreement that we want to be able to look at how teachers support and impact student learning, the metric that is being proposed federally and elsewhere, which is a value-added metric on the state tests, is highly unstable and inaccurate, and can't be used to accurately measure most teachers. And I'm going to resist the professorial impulse to teach you why that is. But a book just came out this week that I finished called Getting Teacher Evaluation Right, and there's a chapter on it, which is much informed by the scholars at Stanford and elsewhere who've been studying this issue. I am trying to bite my tongue so I don't go into the long explanation of the technical difficulties. But, but take my word for it. The statement that was made that everyone knows who the good and bad teachers are, that may or may not be true. Joan gave some contravening evidence, but let's say it is true. What we do know from studies of value-added metrics on state tests, which are restricted to only measure grade level standards and cannot measure above and below grade level growth, what we know from that is that you will not find out who the good and bad teachers are from that metric. And that's a problem because we need accuracy. We need to be able to know really who's contributing to student learning. And just as one example, one study found that a teacher who gets an A 1 year on a value-added teacher evaluation system, they're in the top 20% of teachers, has a 50% chance of getting a C, D, or F the next year. This is across 5 different large districts. Teacher gets an F 1 year in the bottom 20%, has a 50% chance of getting an A, B, or C the next year. Now, if we think that teacher quality is a stable construct of some sort, then 50% of the metrics are inaccurate. You can choose which one it is. We don't know. Was it wrong in year 1 or was it wrong in year 2? But it had to be wrong in one of those 2 years. Again, I won't give you the technical piece, but our challenge in California is to get to a place where we take the best of what courageous districts are doing. In my book, I talk about a number of districts that have productively put student test score and other outcome measures in a portfolio of evidence that is used by teams of teachers and whole schools as well as individuals. Long Beach, Poway, San Juan, San Mateo, and others have used peer assistance and review programs successfully to identify and get help to struggling teachers. And we need to figure out how to put those things together so that teachers can count on an evaluation and support system that really does help them improve individually and collectively.
Linda, we're gonna just jump to squeeze in a couple of questions. Thank you for that. Can we go to this microphone?
Yes, thank you. So my question is to Linda.
And could you just identify yourself, please?
My name is Barry Kaufman, and I asked this question then in the context of serving as a dean of a school of education for a number of years and also a former member of the commission. And I just finished yesterday, Greatness by Design, and I highly recommend it for everyone here. It is an incredible document, so thank you very much.
This is it, yeah.
My question is around accountability of teacher education programs, and how do we begin to get greater accountability related to student learning? And the current accreditation system has definitely been flawed and has not been able to really address this question. So I'd be interested, as chair of the commission, what do you see the role of accountability in the teacher education business?
I really thank you for that question. I think if we're going to help teachers get the knowledge and skills that they want and need, we have to be sure they get a great start in the process. And that means that every program, we have tremendously good both traditional pre-service and intern programs in this state, and we have some really poor ones as well. We have everything in between. Every program has to provide that starting place. So what are we talking about with respect to accreditation? We're talking about common data about programs that would include both surveys of graduates about what they got, what opportunities to learn they had, how well prepared they were, surveys of employers collected statewide so that we can have a common evidence base about what people feel they're getting and what employers believe about the candidates who come to them, using data about performance assessments of teachers, which we invented in California for licensure. We were the first out of the box to create the teacher performance assessment here and the PACT assessment, and Fresno's FAST assessment. Those we're moving to be sure can be scored reliably and are able to be used in a common way to give evidence. And then we're going to have to look at how you can go further into the classroom to look at the results of multiple measures evaluations to also understand something about what happens not only in preparation but induction, professional development, and so on. But we're moving quickly on this agenda. We think that we can both raise the floor and begin to identify the ceiling and push it forward if we take that very seriously.
Can I just add
yeah.
that
We've got 2 more minutes.
even with all that we need to do in the preparation programs, we also have to remember that teaching is a profession that develops over time. And if you're going to keep the system vibrant, not only do you need to improve your preparation programs, but we can't get by with 3 days of in-service and not putting money into teacher training and in-service and having more time for collaboration if we're going to keep the careers vibrant and changing over time as the needs change within our schools.
And may I add one other thing? We're talking a lot about teacher evaluation, and evaluation, as those of you who have taught know, often is based on the roadshow that you do 2 times a year, right? And so instead, our principals are being evaluated on their ability to get into the classrooms on a regular basis to support our teachers. And so we talk about evaluation, but we should also be talking about administrative walkthroughs, which are part of that administrator training and support that they provide for our staff.
We're out of time. Can we get in one very quick question, Erwin?
I would appreciate it since I was the first one cut off the last
Yeah.
time. Okay, on the evaluation side, I just wanted to offer the comment for reaction that when we measure the wrong things or mismeasure the right things or misinterpret the measurements, then 3 things happen. We make poor decisions, we waste money, and we hurt children, and I wonder which of those things people want to happen. But my question really is about investment, and it's based on something that Assemblymember Buchanan said. There are certain things that we could spend money on that would actually save money. They would cost less, and they help kids. And the one I'm thinking of here is early childhood education, which I understand has at least a 7-to-1 return fairly quickly, and it puts kids on the right path towards success. Why would we not do that? I may be asking the wrong panel because there's no one here who would disagree, I think.
I think you'd probably
Thank you.
get some unanimity on that. But let me just ask you, Assemblyman, what's the timeline with your bill?
Well, my bill it's a 2-year bill, and so it won't be going to committee for hearing probably until March of 2013. But we've been meeting with people. We've been reading Linda Darling-Hammond's books and Greatness by Design and everything we can, and relying on experience of local leaders so we can hopefully get it right and come up with a system that really does focus on building the capacity of our teachers in our schools.
Well, I want to thank our panelists, not only for their comments, but to their commitment and dedication to teachers. And I know everybody has that at heart. And thank you so much.